It's Disruptive FM, live from the 2020 Consumer Electronics Showcase in Las Vegas, featuring conversations on the most exciting new technology at CES, sponsored by Microsoft Advertising.
We're here with Ian Schafer, CEO and co-founder of Kindred. Ian, great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Jeff.
All right, so for years you ran the agency Deep Focus. That's how we know each other. Did a lot of really great and interesting work there. And then this past year, I find that you're starting this company that is holding this big event in San Diego in May, all around social movements, social good. Explain a little bit about this concept, why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I learned in working with lots of different companies, which is what drew me to, I guess, agency life in the first place, not being able to pay attention to any one thing for too long, was that all of these companies had these huge resources, right? And they were creating very large footprints, whether that's a carbon footprint or whether that's a physical footprint, right? And every little decision that these companies could make could have a multiplier effect on everything. And many of them did not think about the repercussions of the decisions that they were making because they were always chasing quarterly growth, right? I mean, that's how all the incentives were done inside of their organizations. That's how people's job reviews were evaluated against. But that begs the question, like, what if they saw those decisions through a different lens? What if they started thinking about their business for the long term? And what if they thought about the effects that their business had and their companies had on not only their customers or consumers or people, but also their employees and the people that work there? And as kind of the vibe started changing globally on everything from the climate crisis, right, to socioeconomic inequality, to lack of access to nutrition in certain areas, to the removal of voting rights, right? In some cases, like, people started to trust companies and what they can do more than they trust the government. So what if you could enable and educate companies to make more of the right decisions? And then what if you could make all the nonprofits better at working with those companies as their relationships moved away from things that are more philanthropic and check writing to actually partnerships? And then what if you got culture along for the ride? Like, what if all the people that were so quick to cancel those companies on Twitter for the wrong decisions actually rooted for them to succeed because they were making more of the right ones? So that's where really the idea for all of this came from. And when we realized that we needed to build a community of like-minded people, the best way to get them really working together was actually to bring them together physically in real life.
This is a big deal because this is almost reimagining capitalism in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In our 2020 vision report that we conducted at Microsoft, we noted that people want capitalism to be improved or remixed, so to speak. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, talks about this a lot. Is this something that you see not going away? Do you see us, really moving where we have to take into consideration the economic model that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of emerging from an era, like a more Milton Friedman era, where profits at any cost were expected to kind of trickle down into all the right places. But as it turns out, it doesn't always go to the right places. And instead, you wind up getting addicted to those profits at any cost. I think now that people are seeing just how quickly their actions can lead to a reaction, and maybe social media had something to do with that, right? I think people are getting more aware of what, even as an individual, what your little decisions can make. When you see a video of a sea turtle with a straw like stuck up its nose, right? All of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, right? It's hard to get a plastic straw anywhere. And people would complain about that for a while until it becomes normal. And I think what we've seen throughout history, and it's funny, I was thinking about this actually last night watching the Golden Globes. When they were saluting Ellen DeGeneres, right? And when you think about the role that she played in normalizing like gay marriage, right? When people start seeing this stuff as normal as opposed to an outlier, it starts to sink in, right? And it thus becomes normal. And so again, I'm trying to just normalize this kind of behavior, not in just popular culture, but corporate culture too, which is oftentimes maybe even more predictable. So let's just make the rational argument for it. And I think, like you said, like more and more companies are doing the math. to paraphrase Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
And saying that, you know, like doing good is actually good for business, and not just from a straight up profit standpoint, but even from an innovation standpoint.
Yeah, I love that. Now, tell us a little bit about this event in May. What's happening? It's in San Diego.
Yep.
Who do you have? Who's speaking? I know Chance the Rapper is one of the people there. Who else can we expect?
Chance will be there. You'll also be able to see the CEO of Ben & Jerry's, which is kind of like an OG activist brand.
Wow. One of the definitely one of the originals.
You know, their entire marketing platform this year is around restorative justice, right? Especially in the context of you know, the rapid legalization of marijuana throughout the United States, and understanding that you know, the people that are getting most wealthy off of that are not the people who created that culture in the first place.
That's right.
In fact, those people are in jail.
They're in jail.
So now you're starting to see the results of all of their work, and with a lot of other nonprofits and lots of other folks, including like the Reform Alliance with, you know, Jay-Z and Meek Mill, right? But you'll be able to see CEO Ben & Jerry's there, the heads of corporate social responsibility of companies from like L'Oreal and Unilever, as well as nonprofit leaders like the CEO of St. Jude, Planned Parenthood. I mean, it's just really this, what on paper might look like an eclectic bunch, but you realize they have so much more in common, and that one thing that they have in common, which is different about this event that we're creating, that, you know, which is different than, say, like a typical industry event, it's not vertical, right? It's horizontal. It stretches across industries, not just business and nonprofits, but all different kinds of business. So you could be a decision maker in the supply chain, or you can be an HR leader, or you can be a CEO. But odds are you're thinking about the same things and having some of the same conversations, and you're all part of the machine that, when retuned or reconfigured, can work together to make the world a better place. And so you'll be able to see all of those people there, including, you know, we're bringing over 300 what I'll call like influencers and creators to that event. And it includes Chance, but also includes you know, folks that people are very familiar with on platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat.
Now, we've seen a lot of activism internally at companies, and some of those companies actually responding saying like, hey, keep it quiet. Some of those companies, we won't name them on this podcast or show, firing those people. What's one thing that you would say to someone who comes to you and says, hey, we're trying to create, you know, a groundswell of a social movement within our company? Ian, what do you suggest we do? What's like the one thing you would tell them?
Yeah, I would draw a parallel to recent memory, right, which is, and you're very familiar with this because you wrote a great book about it, which is disruption, right? And I think technology, digital, all that stuff, the internet, disrupted a lot of companies, you know, starting 15 years ago, right, 20 years ago. And there was a fear, an innate fear, that if they didn't revolutionize the way they did business in every aspect, they would not be as competitive in the future, or worse, not be around, right? And so I look at this whole movement towards doing business with purpose as the next phase of disruption. Because back, you know, if you look back and you realize it wasn't actually about the technology, it was about like human-centric design, right? Whether that's designing an organization around its people or designing products for people, purpose is the same thing. It's just maybe less binary. So sooner or later, if you don't play offense and go after purpose, that purpose is going to find you, and it may not be on your terms. So companies, you know, should be taking a stand around the things that are true to their mission and who they are as organizations. They don't have to look that hard to find it. They only need to really look at the people that work there and get a better understanding of what they feel passionately about. Because if you look at all the studies, and not just millennials, that's a tired word, but also like Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, right? Like the generations that are coming up behind them and are in the workforce now. You know, they value their company's values higher than they even value how much they get paid. And maybe that's a factor of a good job market, I don't know, but they're placing different priorities on what they get out of working at a company. And I think when companies realize that, you know, it's getting really competitive for talent out there, they tend to make the right decisions.
Great, love to hear this. Ian Schafer, CEO and co-founder of Kindred, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you so much for having me, appreciate it.